Hello all. So if you watched it, you might remember in my review of the Scheppach OSM600 belt and bobbin sander, I had some issues with the plate behind the belt not being flat. In this video then, I'll show how I sorted that, as much as is possible to do so, and how I went about adding a little mitre gauge to it. Before we get into it, as a lot of people mentioned it, and I did mention at the end of the video, that the same machine is branded many ways, as it has been from day one. No matter the brand, it's a generic China-built machine, all exactly the same, which makes you wonder what's even the point of different budget brands these days if they're all just rebranding generics. One does have a slight difference, that said. The Lumberjack version has a slot in the tilting table for a mitre gauge, so well done Lumberjack. Another budget machine of this type available to people in the US is the Rigid. It too has a mitre slot and generally looks a bit more, but again, seems fundamentally the same, including the pressed steel backing plate for the belts that's causing the issue with my machine. Somebody jumped in on the comments stating their Rigid was perfectly flat and I've no reason to doubt them. Happy for them. But I watched numerous reviews on the Rigid before doing mine, and many talked about the same backplate issue, and even that the belt's squareness to the table seemed to change depending on whether it was at the low or the high point of the oscillation. You pays your money, you takes your chance at this level, I guess. One last thing a couple of people mentioned was me trying to fix my plate by using epoxy to flatten it. Again, I did say this in the video that I was using EL2 laminating epoxy. This is designed for laminating carbon fibre and bonding metals and is much more stable under heat duress than would be your deep pour epoxies for river tables and the two-part stuff you might get from squeezy tubes and the like. These don't perform well under heat, but my point is, not all epoxies are equal. Another thing I'd say regarding heat though, is mine really doesn't get that hot. I mean at all. Lukewarm at best for a half an hour solid use, though we are in the middle of winter here. Which actually leads me nicely on to reporting that another attempt at an EL2 epoxy pour failed to adhere to the backplate, and I'm pretty certain it was due entirely to the temperatures being around 0 centigrade when I was doing them. It's not recommended for application below 15 degrees C. Instead, I plumped for some 2-pack body filler. I didn't want to use this stuff because it absolutely stinks, and because it's literally designed to be sculpted and sanded, it will need the faff of something over the top to stop it wearing away. This wouldn't have been the case if the bloody epoxy had stuck. One good thing with this stuff being so easily sandable is you need not try to make it too pretty from the outset. Just dollop it on, spread it out, and wait for it to set. What about the bolt heads I've covered up? Well, at this point I couldn't give a monkeys. I just want it flat and usable. I double checked all the fixings before covering them up, and they have nylocks on the other side, so I doubt they'll need any attention for years. And if they do, it's not hard to get rid of the filler to expose the heads again. So plenty slapped on, good to sand in 20 minutes they say. No chance in this weather, so I left it a few hours. Unfortunately, my orbital sander, the large rectangular sheet type, was with the father-in-law, so I flattened with my random orbital. Worked really well as it happened. Took off the rough bumps first, then sanded and periodically checked for flatness as I went. You can probably see the pad spin the roller a little there. Gives you an idea that we're around planar. We'd actually got nice and flat, nice and quick, using 180 grit. I was well prepared to dab on a second round of filler if needed to get it right, but no need in the end. Really fiddly to hold the torch and ruler in such a way so as not to block the shot, but as you can see there's no light bleed through. I'd call that a win. Just double checked with another reference before committing to the next step. Sometimes I swear my tools conspire against me and tell lies. Not today though. My next step is to glue on this Makita carbon pad for one of their 100mm belt sanders. I chose one of these rather than the metal plates and sub bases available for belt sanders, as this will be less of a pain to fit flat and to tear off again if I ever have to. Around £3 these are, and its main purpose for me is to stop the belt eating away the filler. Ideal. Fixed simply with several dollops of mitre superglue. Lovely. Testy time. I've set the belt sander back in the machine and tightened it down. Level box 0 to the table. That'll do, won't it? Now before I get into any sanding, I want to add another widget. This is a dinky protractor from a mitre gauge. I actually bought a pack of 2 for around a tenner about 5 years ago, thinking they'll come in handy. They still sell them on eBay, although they've gone up a fair bit, but I'll leave a link in the description if you want to take a look for yourself. I'm going to add a piece of 2020 profile to it for a fence. These little protractors come with a piece of Aldi screwed to the front of its pressed steel body. On this I'm scoring for hole positions to fix the profile. Marked up, I can unscrew the plate. Then drill it out for the new screws. I'm going 5.5mm drill bit for the M5 screw. Then with a 10mm bit as a sort of counter bore to sink the flat screw heads. Delicate operation with this size bit. Apply a bit too much grunt and it will chew through this alley in a second. Screw head nicely sunk there. If you've seen any of my alley profile builds, you'll be familiar with these sliding T-nut fixings. The screw heads will be covered when I refit the protractor, so if it didn't quite sit right, I'd have to dismantle it and reset. Tiny little M3 screws attach the protractor to the plate, and thankfully all aligned perfectly with the protractor and profile fence all sitting flat. Here I'm just checking position for the central pivot screw, making sure there's clearance at 45 degrees whilst remaining nice and close to the belt. I can then centre mark for the hole. Then drill. More of these fiddly M3 screws for fixing. If I get on with this little mitre gauge, I'll get some thumb screws for this, I think. On top there's a knurled thumb screw type nut. Happy with the positioning, I go through the same process for fixing on the protractor. And there we have both fixings on and it's ready to set and test. So happy the belt is 90 degrees to the table and the mitre gauge 90 to the belt, I lop off an end of this piece of scrap, purposely doing a poor, not even close to square job of it. Quite a way off square as you can hopefully see. So let's see if we can correct that. I've got a 180 grit belt on it here. What's cool is you can see from the debris on the belt when it appears to have sanded the entire face. And here's the result. Square, checked from every side. I'm really pleased with that, beautifully smooth and flat. Obviously it wouldn't matter how square you set the machine if your workpiece wasn't dimensioned square in the first place. This piece was, and the result speaks for itself, I think. Same purposely poor cut for something like a 45 degree angle then. You should be able to make out there the cuts don't look right, and together looks like an obtuse angle, nothing like a 90. So although the protractor has etchings on it for each degree, I think I'm happier setting this physically with a square or a sliding bevel for more uncommon angles. Just because this isn't precise machinery, the belt sander being removable and all, I'd just rather trust physical setting tools, you know? As I sand it, you'll notice I'm kind of dabbing the piece on and off the belt. A couple of reasons for this. It gives a cleaner result, plus it's much less likely to stall the belt. It's not a massively powerful machine, nor is there much adjustment for tightening the belt further, limits of budget machines, but dabbing the piece like this works well and gives a really nice result. Talking of results, you can see there the inside of the mitre is nice and square. The face too is square to the body. Square in this manner means your mitre will sit flat, giving a nice even join all round. I could have done with moving the camera slightly to the left here, but it's meeting the square beautifully. The join is clean and tight, and all while sitting flat. I think the combination of the backplate fix and adding a mitre gauge has really opened up working potential for this machine. I was a bit disappointed with it initially, and having watched a number of reviews of these type of machines, of whichever brand, I'm not alone. Hopefully I've shown here that it is fixable though, making these machines an incredibly versatile little addition for small workshops. I doubt very much Scheppach will approach me for any more reviews, mind you, but they did tell me that even if it wasn't positive, it'd still be useful to help them improve the machines. Well, let's hope so. The Lumberjack version illustrates that whoever the manufacturer is of these, they are open to supplying with slight changes. So to Scheppach, I say change the backplate to something flat and add a mitre gauge. This will differentiate your product from the crowd and make it genuinely useful. With that said, I welcome your comments and thoughts below. Are you tired of rebadged generic machinery? The illusion of choice sort of thing? Does it matter as long as it's cheap? Could be a minefield to explore, that one I reckon. Anyways, like if you did, sub if you aren't already, and as ever, if you made it this far, thanks for watching.